The first sign that something was wrong came during the comparative biology lecture on Deck 7 of the USS Daedalus, a multi-species research vessel orbiting the gas giant Garoon. Zachary Fellman, the only human in the interstellar exchange program, blinked several times as the holographic display swam in and out of focus. His pulse thudded too hard in his ears, and a damp sheen of sweat gathered on his forehead. Professor Belvex, a rigid, blue-skinned instructor from the planet Oro, had just finished a lengthy breakdown of nerve regeneration rates in Relaxian reptiles when Zachary's head tipped forward. He tried to catch himself, but his elbow slipped, and with a dull thump, his head hit the edge of his desk console. "Zachary?" hissed a concerned voice beside him. It was Rilari, his lab partner, a Cernexian with lime-green skin and translucent ear membranes that fluttered when she was anxious. This time, they flared wide open. "You're leaking fluids from your dermal layer. Are you overheating? Should I initiate an emergency mist cycle?" Zachary sat up slowly, blinking. "No, I'm good. Just tired, maybe. A little warm in here." "You are glowing red in the face. Your internal temperature is elevated. That is not good. You require stasis." "No." "No stasis," he mumbled, trying to force a dismissive chuckle. "Probably just a fever, nothing. A nap won't fix." Professor Belvec turned from the board, his compound eyes narrowing. "Human Zachary, are you experiencing a medical episode?" Zachary managed a weak nod. "Just a fever. Happens sometimes." The room erupted. Rilari let out a series of shrill alarm tones from her throat. A Kraylock student dropped its nutrient tablet and backed away, tentacle limbs curling protectively. One of the younger frolics activated a containment bubble and sealed itself inside. Belvax barked into his comm, calling for medical personnel. "Containment protocols," someone cried. Zachary tried to stand, but the room tilted. He stumbled forward and collided with a wall-mounted display. The pain in his knee was sharp, and his breath came in short, shallow bursts. "Zachary, remain still." Rilari reached for him, but hesitated, unsure of how to touch a human without causing damage. "I just need to lie down," Zachary muttered. A medical drone zipped into the room, followed by Dr. Velo, the ship's chief xenophysiologist. He was a tall, gliding being with a semi-transparent torso that shimmered with internal biofluids. His diagnostic visor blinked rapidly as he scanned Zachary. Temperature, 102.7 degrees Fahrenheit. Heart rate elevated, dehydration present. Immediate biobed transfer recommended. "I'm not dying," Zachary protested weakly. "You could be," Velo replied flatly. Zachary was hoisted gently onto a stretcher by the drone's mechanical arms. He didn't resist, but he didn't stop talking either. "I've had worse. One time in Colorado, I got the flu and still went backpacking." "That sounds like madness," muttered Rilari. The medbay was sterile and brightly lit. Zachary was lowered onto the diagnostic bed, electrodes attached to his temples and chest. A cool gel spread over his forehead, soothing the heat prickling under his skin. Dr. Velo reviewed the scan. Elevated white blood cell count, infection likely viral, no foreign parasitic activity, lungs clear, liver function normal. This is a systemic but mild febrile response. "Yeah," Zachary said, voice raspy. "That's a fever." Velo eyed him. "You are aware your body is actively heating itself to combat an infection?" "Yeah, standard human immune function. It's doing its job." "You're literally cooking your own brain." Zachary chuckled, then coughed. "It's not that bad. You are delirious. This is not a laughing matter. Give me water and a blanket, I'll sleep it off." Velo frowned at least. The vertical slits along his chin plates narrowed, which Zachary had learned meant displeasure. "Your species' tendency toward biological extremism is deeply concerning." 2 hours later, Zachary was asleep under 5 layers of thermal blankets and a hydration drip. His temperature had stabilized at 101, and Velo finally stepped away from the monitor. That's when the students started showing up. First Rilari, her head low, eyes wide. "Will he survive?" she asked. "Him is recovering," Velo said. But he was melting. No, his body was actively fighting the pathogen. And you allowed this? Heme insisted on hydration and sleep. That is his species' protocol. Rolari looked horrified. He refused stasis. He refused neural suppression. He laughed. More students gathered outside the glass partition. Some took notes. Others whispered. Halem said it was nothing, one frolic muttered. And then he passed out, said a Kralox. He said just a fever, Rolari added. A holographic warning sign was posted on the door. Caution. Human immune response in progress. Zachary woke after 6 hours, groggy but lucid. He sat up slowly, sipped from the hydration pack, and winced at the headache still pounding behind his eyes. Fever broke, he said to the empty room. The door opened. You're awake, Velo said. Very good. Your temperature has returned to acceptable parameters. Your body achieved immune victory. Awesome, Zachary said. So I can get back to class? No. What? You are on enforced rest for 24 Earth hours. Minimum. Your heart rate indicates residual strain. Your spleen is still slightly inflamed. You will remain in observation. Zachary groaned. But I feel fine. You are not fine. You are recovering from a viral infection that caused systemic inflammation. You lost nearly 2% of your body fluid mass. You fainted. Zachary nodded reluctantly. All right. Rest it is. Velo hesitated. May I ask, why did you laugh? Where? When we told you your body was overheating. You laughed and said nothing a nap won't fix. Because it's true. That's what we do. Get sick, rest, hydrate, recover. You were not afraid? Zachary looked up. I've had fevers before. Most humans have. It's not fun, but it's familiar. Velo turned toward the observation window. Rolari was still there, watching. Jean thought you were dying, Velo said. Zachary smiled faintly. She's sweet, but I wasn't. The next day, Zachary was released with strict instructions. Avoid overexertion, report any relapse symptoms, drink fluids regularly. He returned to class with a thermos and a blanket draped over his shoulders. The room went silent when he entered. Rolari approached cautiously. You are functional again. Yeah, fever's gone. She leaned in. You laughed before you lost consciousness. I guess I did. Do all humans do that? Sometimes. Laughing helps, even when things suck. Rolari blinked. That is terrifying. Zachary grinned and took his seat. Welcome to humanity. Zachary woke to a dull ache behind his eyes and the faint antiseptic tang still clinging to his nostrils. It was the second morning since he'd been medically grounded. The lighting in the medbay had shifted to a softer hue, indicating early cycle. He sat up carefully, rubbing the heel of his hand against his temple. His hydration pack had been replaced sometime during the night, and the fluid chamber on the wall blinked amber low but not empty. The door slid open with a hiss, and Rolari stepped inside, holding something wrapped in a thermal cloth. I brought you a nutrient wrap, she said, approaching gingerly. It does not contain any of the substances you are allergic to. Zachary accepted it, peeling back the cloth. Steam rose from a dark green paste, folded into a spongy base. It smelled faintly of mint and boiled kelp. Thanks, he said, chewing slowly. You didn't have to come all this way. I did. The others keep asking me what you're made of. Zachary swallowed. That's not ominous at all. They want to know how your body survived a destabilized core temperature without internal cell rupture. That's just a fever. They're calling it the heat death adaptation. He nearly choked on the next bite. Seriously? Your immune system is being studied by 3 different departments now. He set the food down. Can we not turn my seasonal flu into a thesis? It is already being cited in a paper on metabolic extremophiles. Zachary leaned back against the bed frame. Fantastic. I get sick, and now I'm a case study with limbs. Rilari tilted her head. You were unconscious for 6 hours. Your skin temperature exceeded the safe threshold for most known vertebrates. You required no external cooling aside from a hydration drip. Your brain activity never dipped below stage 2 sleep. That's abnormal. I mean, sure, but not for humans. Then why don't your records show it? Zachary furrowed his brow. What records? You submitted baseline physiology when you joined the program, yes? Yeah, standard stuff, vitals, reflexes, blood panels. There was no mention of deliberate hypothermic resistance. Because that's not what it is. We don't resist heat like that. The fever's not a defense against heat damage. It's a controlled response to viral proteins. Our body intentionally raises the thermostat to make the environment less ideal for replication. Rilari blinked slowly. You are telling me your immune system cooks you on purpose? Kind of. Not enough to kill us, just enough to slow the invader down. And it speeds up immune cell transport. And this is common? Most of us go through it a few times a year. Rilari hesitated. You implied this was a mild case. What would a severe one look like? Zachary scratched the back of his neck. If it hits 104 degrees, we get worried. Beyond that, things can go sideways. Seizures, organ stress, hallucinations. And yet you laughed. Because this wasn't that. I knew where it was going. I've been there before. Rilari sat on the stool beside his bed. You understand that none of this is in your shared biological briefing. Probably because nobody thought it'd be relevant unless we were on fire. The others think you're hiding enhanced immunity. Zachary sighed. I'm not enhanced. I'm just built like every other person from Earth. We don't have backup organs or regenerative limbs. We get sick, we feel miserable, then we get better. That's the whole thing. Rilari leaned forward. So the delirium? Normal. The sweating? Standard. The vivid dreams? He looked at her sharply. How do you know about the dreams? You talked in your sleep. Loudly. Zachary groaned and buried his face in his hands. Great. What did I say? You demanded to be given back your garlic bread. The thick layers of ice. And that tracks. You also said you would obliterate the toenail empire. Orler tracks. Rilari tapped her datapad. Is this garlic bread a form of medicine? No. Just delicious. There was a pause. She tapped her stylus against her leg. The Frolic twins want to know if your fever was triggered by a unique atmospheric exposure. They think your home planet's oxygen-nitrogen balance might have primed your immune system. Tell them I got sick because I touched a shared surface in the gym and then forgot to wash my hands before eating a wrap. She stared at him. That's it? Pretty much. And this is typical? Unfortunately. She stood. I must recalibrate my understanding of your species. Zachary leaned back. Get in line. Later that cycle, a delegation from the Xenomedical Academy arrived. They were led by an Iridian named Tovax, whose carapace shimmered with shifting patterns of green and silver. He carried a portable scanner and a notepad made of compressed quartz substrate. I understand you experienced a febrile episode, Tovax began without preamble. Yeah, I had a bug. We are attempting to catalog the full sequence. Please describe, in order, the onset symptoms. Zachary exhaled. Okay, first I felt tired, like heavier than usual. Then the headaches started. Not sharp, more like pressure behind my eyes. My muscles ached. I got chills and then overheated fast. Then my breathing got shallow, and I felt like I couldn't regulate my body temp. Drenched in sweat 1 minute, then freezing the next. Frozen moons. Tovax jotted notes. You did not seek medical assistance immediately. Didn't think I needed to. That's normal for us. You experienced thermoregulatory failure and cognitive blurring. That indicates neural strain. It was manageable. You lost consciousness. Yeah, that part was new. Tovax paused. How did your species survive this evolutionary trajectory? Sheer stubbornness. The Iridian's mandibles clicked once. "You are being facetious." "A little." Tovax adjusted his scanner. "Would you consent to a full immune sequencing?" Zachary frowned. "For what?" "To determine the genetic markers responsible for your resilience." "I don't think it's resilience. I think it's just what we do." "That is what we are trying to understand." Zachary nodded slowly. "All right, but no cloning." "No cloning? And no weird hybrids?" "We do not engage in that practice." "Good, because I don't want to find out I have a cousin on Grelax Prime with gills in my eyebrows." Tovax turned to Rilari. "He is disconcertingly comfortable with genetic discussions." "I noticed," she said. That evening, after the scans and the poking and the endless questions, Zachary was cleared to return to his quarters. He walked slowly, still a little wobbly, and stopped only once to lean against the wall when a wave of dizziness hit. He found a message capsule waiting outside his door. Inside it, a small collection of drawings from the younger Frolic students, each one depicting him as a sort of mythical fire creature, trailing vapor and glowing with internal light. He sat on his bunk, holding one of the drawings up to the lamplight. It showed him breathing flames onto a virus, which was depicted as a wide-eyed, screaming blob. He laughed. Then he sneezed. Once, twice. He froze. A quiet voice crackled from the wall comm. It was Rilari. "Are you ill again?" Zachary wiped his nose. "No, just dust." There was a pause. "You're sure?" He looked at the drawing again. "Yeah, just dust." Zachary stood in front of the mirror in his shared quarters, gently pressing a fingertip to the faint bruise on his temple. It had faded from a deep purple to a pale yellow-green, a familiar color shift he'd seen plenty of times growing up with siblings who had an affinity for door frames and poor spatial awareness. The fever had passed, but the aftermath still lingered in his joints. A slight stiffness in the knees and a deep ache in his shoulders that flared when he stretched too far. A notification chimed softly from the wall panel. Rilari's name blinked once, then disappeared. She was waiting outside. He opened the door. "You're punctual," he said, tugging on the collar of his jacket. "You were not in the dining module during first meal," she replied. "I assumed you were still compromised." "I overslept. Dr. Velo's sleep order is still active until tonight." She gave a short nod, then held out a sealed container. "This is temperature-neutral broth. No protein strands, minimal cellulose. You are to consume the entire portion. You're rationing me soup now. You lost mass. You must restore electrolytes and fluid balance." Zachary took the container without protest, cracking the seal and sipping the lukewarm broth. It tasted like watered-down spinach and sea salt, but he didn't complain. Anything heavier would have sat in his stomach like a rock. Rilari gestured toward the corridor. "The physiology department is hosting an informal review of your fever event. Attendance is optional." "Are you asking if I want to go to a seminar about myself?" "I am recommending it. There are misunderstandings that require clarification." "Let me guess. Someone thinks I hallucinated an extra kidney?" "No. Someone thinks you entered an intentional thermal trance." Zachary pinched the bridge of his nose. "Lead the way." The review hall was modestly sized, with tiered seating and a central platform. No fewer than 6 species were represented among the attendees. A cluster of frolics clicked their mandibles in quiet anticipation. A pair of Kraloks twisted their eye stalks toward the entrance, and an Oro scholar hovered near the display panel, adjusting slides with the twitch of his neural tendrils. Zachary immediately spotted the diagram of a human skeleton on the main screen, annotated with glowing symbols. He sat off to the side, sipping his broth. Tovax, the Iridian researcher who had overseen the immune sequencing, took the platform. "We begin with an overview of known human thermoregulation. Contrary to standard assumptions, the fever response is not an uncontrolled anomaly, but a managed, multi-stage immunological protocol." The Kraloks raised a limb. "You claim a temperature elevation of over 3 degrees centigrade is not catastrophic?" "Correct," Tovax replied. For humans, this range supports enhanced leukocyte activity, accelerates antibody production, and can inhibit viral replication. A ripple of disbelief moved through the audience. Zachary leaned back in his seat, watching Rilari's ear membranes flutter slightly with what he'd come to recognize as restrained exasperation. Another student, a sphallic with branching antennae, leaned forward. What safeguards exist to prevent thermal overreach? Zachary set the broth aside. We don't have built-in limiters, he said. Our body balances it with sweating, increased respiration, and behavioral reactions like resting or seeking cooler environments. If it gets too high, we intervene with medication. Tovax gestured toward him. Human Zachary, please elaborate on these interventions. Antipyretics, Zachary said. Substances that tell the hypothalamus to reset the temperature set point. Acetaminophen or ibuprofen, usually. Babbitt tilted her head. You chemically argue with your own brain regulator? In a way, yeah. And this is safe? In moderation. Tovax transitioned the display to a chart comparing fever thresholds across species. Humans had the widest band between baseline and critical failure. Several murmurs followed. Your tolerance window is unnaturally broad, said the Oro scholar. What evolutionary pressure required such adaptability? Zachary shrugged. Earth's full of pathogens, viruses, bacteria, fungi, sometimes all at once. We didn't get to be top of the food chain by being delicate. Tovax turned to the audience. Current hypothesis suggests environmental volatility on Earth necessitated a robust immune strategy, favoring generalist responses over structural redundancy. It's not elegant, Zachary added, but it works. Rilari stood. The confusion arose when most of us interpreted the fever as a malfunction. We assumed the human system was failing. Zachary nodded. But that's the thing. It wasn't an error. It was the system doing exactly what it's built for. A silence followed. Then, slowly, the Fralic delegation began to adjust their notes. The Kralok exchanged low-frequency pulses. The Sphalic tapped her antennae together in contemplation. When the session ended, Tovax approached Zachary directly. You were lucid during higher-than-normal temperatures. Did you experience cognitive drift? I had some strange dreams, minor disorientation, but nothing I couldn't ground myself from. Would you consent to a follow-up scan? Only if it doesn't involve more needles. No needles. Then sure. Rilari walked with him back toward the central lift. Your behavior during the fever is now considered a case study in high-functioning thermal resilience. I was unconscious for half of it. Yet you retained memory. That is notable. He rubbed his temple. I mostly remember being thirsty and annoyed. Still notable. They entered the lift, and the hum of the machinery filled the silence. Next time I get sick, Zachary said, remind me to fake a broken finger instead. At least then no one writes a paper about it. I will not lie for you. Figured. The lift opened onto the recreational deck. A small group of students milled near the viewing pane, watching the gas giant's swirling storms. Zachary breathed in the filtered air, grateful to be standing without vertigo. Rilari handed him a folded slip of polymer. Your immunity report. You are being excused from lab exposure modules until your values stabilize. Meaning? No more dissecting unknown fungi. Less. They sat near the viewport, watching the distant flashes of electricity ripple through Garoon's atmosphere. What did you think was happening, Zachary asked, when I passed out? I thought your neural core was overheating, that your body was failing to self-regulate and you would require induced stasis. And when I woke up and asked for water, I thought you were delusional. He chuckled. Fair. Rilari watched the storms. I studied human anatomy. But theory does not prepare you for the reality of a system that weaponizes heat against itself, with no mechanical override. Zachary tilted his head. We adapt fast, sometimes too fast for our own good. This is what unsettles some of the others. The speed of your recovery, the casualness of your response. We don't think about it much, You get sick, you get better. You only make a fuss if it doesn't go away. You laughed. I always laugh when I get a fever. It makes the sweating feel less dramatic. She was quiet for a moment. I do not understand that. You don't have to. Just know it means I'm still in the fight. Rilari nodded once, slowly. Understood. They sat in silence as another flare lit up the gas giant's horizon. By the next cycle, the fever was old news. The incident had been catalogued, the data synthesized, and the emotional reactions tempered by analysis. Zachary returned to his routine, now with an extra hydration bottle and a slightly overbearing wellness monitor installed in his quarters. He didn't mind. The next time he sneezed, 3 days later, a Kraylock student dropped their entire nutrient tray and sprinted from the room. Zachary wiped his nose with a tissue and sighed. I'm not even warm. Rilari, seated beside him, didn't flinch. You are simply dusty again. Exactly. And that was the end of it.